Imagine holding your breath. Right now, the average person can hold their breath for 60 seconds, maybe 90 if they train for it. Now imagine holding your breath for 13 minutes, diving to depths of 60 meters, without equipment, without tanks, without anything except your body and the water around you. Now imagine that ability is not a skill you learned. It is written into your DNA, permanently, inherited from thousands of years of ancestors who were born for the ocean. There is a people in the Philippines who can do this. And science just discovered that their bodies have literally evolved differently from the rest of humanity to make it possible. Not trained, not practiced, evolved. And the same ancient DNA that helped build the Philippines is part of why it happened. Stay with me, because this story will change how you see what a Filipino body is capable of. Before we go deeper, our goal on this video is to get 500 likes and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. In the waters of the Sulu Archipelago, between the southern Philippines and the northern coast of Borneo, there is a people who have lived on the ocean for longer than anyone can measure. They are called the Bajau, or the Sama de Laut, the sea nomads. For thousands of years, they did not live on land. They lived on boats, entire communities floating on the open sea, families born on boats, children who learned to swim before they learned to walk, grandparents who spent more of their lives on water than on solid ground. Their entire civilization was built on the ocean. Not beside it, not near it, on it. When they needed food, they dove for it, not with tanks or equipment, with nothing but their breath and their bodies, and knowledge passed down through thousands of years of living on the sea. The deepest recorded free dive by a Bajau diver is 79 meters. That is deeper than a 20-story building is tall, on a single breath. The longest recorded breath hold is over 13 minutes. These are not outliers. These are not record-breaking athletes training in controlled environments. These are ordinary Bajau fishermen going about their daily work on a normal Tuesday morning in the Sulu Sea. For the rest of us, this seems impossible, but for the Bajau, it is simply Tuesday. And science just discovered why. In 2018, a team of researchers from the University of Copenhagen traveled to the Sulu Archipelago to study the Bajau. They brought portable ultrasound equipment, and they did something very simple. They measured the Bajau's spleens, and what they found stopped them cold. The spleen is a small organ most people never think about, but for divers, it is everything. When you hold your breath and dive underwater, your spleen contracts, it squeezes, and it releases a surge of oxygen-rich red blood cells into your circulatory system, like a biological oxygen tank. The bigger your spleen, the more oxygen-rich blood you can release, the longer you can stay underwater. The researchers measured the spleens of Bajau divers. Then they measured the spleens of the Saluan people, a neighboring community in the same region, who live on land and farm for their food. Same part of the world, same general ancestry, different lifestyle. The Bajau spleens were on average 50% larger. 50%. But here is where it gets extraordinary. The researchers then measured the spleens of Bajau community members who do not dive, people who have never spent significant time underwater in their lives. And those Bajau, the non-divers, also had significantly larger spleens than the Saluan. This was not a physical adaptation from a lifetime of diving. This was not something the body developed through training or practice. This was genetic. It was in their DNA, whether they dived or not. The Bajau body had literally evolved to be better at living underwater than any other human population on Earth. When the researchers analyzed the Bajau genome, they found two specific genetic variants that appear in the Bajau at far higher frequencies than in any other human population studied. The first is a variant in the PDE10A gene. This gene controls thyroid hormone levels, and thyroid hormone directly influences spleen size. The Bajau variant of PDE10A produces larger spleens. Not because the Bajau trained for it, not because they chose it, because thousands of years of living on the ocean selected for it. The Bajau ancestors who happened to be born with slightly larger spleens could dive deeper, could stay underwater longer, could catch more fish, could feed their families better, could survive, and they passed that genetic variant to their children, who passed it to their children, generation after generation, over thousands of years, until the larger spleen became the Bajau standard. Not the exception, the standard. The second genetic variant is in the BDKRB2 gene, which affects the human diving reflex. When you submerge in cold water, your heart rate slows automatically. Your blood vessels constrict. Your body redirects blood away from your limbs and toward your vital organs to conserve oxygen. This is called the diving reflex. Every human has it, but the Bajau version of BDKRB2 makes their diving reflex stronger, faster, more efficient. Their heart slows more dramatically when they dive. Their bodies redirect blood more effectively. Their oxygen lasts longer. And this, too, is written into their DNA, not learned, inherited. Now here is the detail that connects this story to something much older and much deeper. When researchers analyzed exactly where some of the Bajau genetic adaptations came from, they found something unexpected. One of the genetic variants found in high frequency among the Bajau, a gene called FAM178B, which helps the body maintain proper blood pH levels during a dive, appears to have been inherited from the Denisovans, the same ancient human species whose DNA we discussed when we talked about the Philippines, and the Aita Magbukon people of Bataan, who carry the highest concentration of Denisovan DNA on Earth. The Denisovans lived in the Philippines. They interbred with the ancestors of the Filipino people, and they left behind fragments of their genetic code that thousands of years later are still helping Filipino sea nomads breathe underwater. Ancient human DNA, still working, still protecting, still giving the descendants of the people it was passed to an advantage that no other population on Earth has inherited in the same way. The Philippines is not just where one human species lived. It is where multiple human species met and merged and created something that could not have existed anywhere else. Something that science is only now beginning to understand. Now here is what your history class never told you. Spain spent 333 years trying to colonize the Philippines, and in all that time, they never conquered the Bajau. Not once. Spain called them Moros, the same label they had used for Muslims in Spain, trying to make people who had lived on these waters for thousands of years sound foreign on their own sea. Spain sent military expeditions into the Sulu Archipelago. They built forts. They launched naval campaigns. They tried for 300 years. And the Bajau, the people whose DNA had been shaped by thousands of years of mastering the ocean, simply went where Spain could not follow. Deeper into the archipelago, further into the open sea, into waters that Spanish warships could not navigate, into reef systems that Spanish sailors did not know, into an ocean that the Bajau had been reading, like a map, for thousands of years. Spain never taught you about the Bajau, because the Bajau were proof that Spain did not conquer everything, that there were Filipino people who looked at 333 years of colonial power and were simply not impressed, who kept their language, their faith, their identity, their ocean, and their DNA completely intact. Now I want you to think about something. The Bajau did not choose to evolve. No one sat down and decided, we are going to develop larger spleens. We are going to strengthen our diving reflex. We are going to inherit genes from an ancient human species. That will make us better at living on the ocean. It happened because they lived, because their ancestors showed up every day and dove into the water and fed their families and survived and passed something forward. Not just culture, not just knowledge, DNA, physical, biological, measurable proof that the way they lived became part of what they are. That is what thousands of years of mastery looks like. Not a trophy, not a written record. Something written into the body itself. And now think about what that means for every Filipino. The Bajau are an extreme example, but the same principle applies to every ethnic group that has inhabited these islands for tens of thousands of years. The Igorot who built rice terraces at 2,000 meters altitude, the Tausug who navigated the open Sulu Sea in war prowess, the Butuanon whose goldsmithing was so precise that Chinese imperial officials stopped and stared. Every one of those peoples carried in their DNA the accumulated mastery of thousands of years of doing extraordinary things in the place they called home. Spain arrived and called them primitive. Science arrived and found genetic superpowers. The Bajau still exist, right now, today. In the waters of the Sulu Archipelago, there are Bajau communities still living on their boats, still diving without equipment, still reading the ocean the way their ancestors read it thousands of years ago. Their children still learn to swim before they walk. Their divers still descend to depths that trained athletes spend years trying to reach on an ordinary working morning. And in their DNA, the genetic legacy of thousands of years of ocean mastery is still there, still working, still giving their bodies capabilities that the rest of humanity does not have. Spain tried to erase them. 300 years of colonial power tried to rename them, relocate them, convert them, conquer them. And the Bajau are still on their ocean, still diving, still carrying in their bodies the proof that some things cannot be colonized, cannot be renamed, cannot be taken, because they are written deeper than any colonial document can reach, into the DNA itself. The average person can hold their breath for 60 seconds. The Bajau can hold theirs for 13 minutes. The average person's spleen weighs about 150 grams. The Bajau spleen is 50% larger. The average person's diving reflex is a background biological function. The Bajau diving reflex is a genetic superpower written into their DNA over thousands of years of choosing the ocean every single day. And part of that genetic gift came from an ancient human species that lived in the Philippines before Homo sapiens arrived, before any recorded history, before any colonial power gave anyone a name. The Philippines was not a stop on the journey of human evolution. It was a destination, a place where ancient humans lived and merged and created something that exists nowhere else on Earth. And the Bajau are living proof that Filipino civilization did not begin when Spain arrived. It was already ancient, already extraordinary, already written into the bodies of the people who called these islands home. Share this with every Filipino who was told that their history began with colonization, because their history is written in their DNA, and DNA does not lie. Subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the story they tried to erase